Camden is a calm second grader who passed his exams and did his homework normally, like every other second grader. One day he came home from school teary-eyed and upset. His parents had never seen him come home in such a state. When they asked him what was wrong, he tried to shrug it off and shut them off. His parents didn't take that as an answer and kept on pushing until he eventually showed them a piece of schoolwork that had scathing criticism from his teacher. After taking a closer look at the paper, Camden's father, Chris, noticed that this was no ordinary critique and was definitely not about to let it slide. Camden was a calm and well-behaved child, student at Valley View Elementary School. No teacher ever complained about him or mentioned the slightest critique about his schoolwork, which is why it came as a surprise to the Pillen family when he started receiving so much criticism from the same teacher at school. When Chris saw the note on Camden's schoolwork, he wondered whether there was something more serious going on that he didn't know about. And that's when he started looking into the matter more seriously. As far as schools go, Valley View is an ordinary public school. And as far as students go, Camden was not an overachiever by any standards, but he was doing reasonably well with his schoolwork, and no teacher had any issue with him whatsoever. However, ever since he started second grade, the number of complaints Chris had received went up dramatically. While Camden was otherwise a typical young kid in many ways, his father had always known him to be a good student who did his schoolwork on time and scored well on his exams. It was difficult for his father to sit back and watch as his child was slowly starting to fail and hate school more every day that goes by. As a responsible and caring parent, he felt that he had to act, and he had to act before things got worse. It had already become apparent that his son was seriously struggling. His grades were dropping regularly, and this wasn't like Camden at all. Something was seriously wrong, and his father was determined to get to the bottom of this. The day Camden returned home one day with a written criticism from his teacher, Alyssa Rupt-Bonnick, Chris realized that the teacher was likely at the center of all of this. The note read pathetic. Camden had answered 13 in 3 minutes. Melissa Bonnick had been teaching at the school for some time and had earned herself a reputation for being a pretty tough teacher to impress. Camden was one of her students, and she had not gotten along well with him that year. It seemed as though everything Camden did was wrong and every mistake he made was met with a harsh written warning, as if he committed some sort of unforgivable crime. The negative feedback was destroying his self-esteem and confidence. Chris was angered by this comment that the teacher had written on Camden's homework sheets. The criticism was uncalled for, and Bonnick had gone way too far in her harshness. Instead of offering constructive criticism, she'd simply attacked her student personally. Her comments only kept getting harsher and more inconsiderate, and this was hurting little Camden. Had this been the only negative comment that he'd received from Mrs. Bonnick that year, Chris probably wouldn't have had such a big issue out of it. However, Bonnie had been sending home a lot of negative feedback all along the year, and most of it was personal. She was addressing the person, not criticizing the work itself, and that wasn't something Chris was going to tolerate. Had her criticism been fair and constructive, as criticism should be, Chris would have addressed Kim indirectly. However, calling a student pathetic was going too far. He believed that Bonnick, the teacher, had a responsibility to ensure that every learner was treated fairly. She was there to teach them and correct them, not shake their self-esteem and wreck their confidence. Chris decided to take things to a higher scale by posting about the incident on his Facebook page. He wanted the world to know about the teacher's poor attitude and behavior with his son. After making a post explaining what had happened, along with the note that Bonnick had written, Chris was surprised to see that his rant went viral on every social media site. The entire country had taken an active interest in what was happening in his son's school life. People were outraged at the teacher's comment. They all agreed that the language used was harsh and is in no way adequate for a criticism of some schoolwork. The comments and people's sharing showed that the online community, including other school teachers, was strongly against the teacher's harsh words and attitude. Both Chris and Camden vindicated by this thread and the way it went viral. After sharing his son's note on social media, Chris was going to leave it at that, but the online community had another opinion. Only a few hours after the post, someone went ahead and even created an online petition calling for Bonnet to be fired. Chris was astonished to see that the public people who didn't even know him or Camden personally had rallied behind him. He never thought that the story of his son's harsh note would mean so much to so many. The petition made things serious, and everything escalated quickly. The petition meant that Bonnet's career was on the line unless she could find a way to defend herself against the backlash. At this point, though, Chris was already seeing red and believed that firing her would be the best option, not only for his son, but for every other child who may have fallen victim to Bonnet's harsh criticisms. Sometimes you simply have to draw a line, and for Chris, this was one of those times. Only moments after the petition started on Camden's behalf, almost 10,000 people had already signed it. However, a group of teachers rallied behind her and started speaking up for Bonnet, saying that she didn't deserve to be fired over a simple comment. But what Bonnet had done was pretty damaging, especially to a student at such a young age. While they all agreed that she deserved to be reprimanded for her actions, the teachers who spoke up for her felt that losing her job would be taking things too far. Some of the people taking Bonnet's side even turned the issue on Chris and blamed his parenting skills. They went as far as to tell him to stay off social media and rather spend time raising his children. They argued that had he spent more time with his son, ensuring that he did his homework well, he wouldn't have had such a comment from his teacher. Ultimately, the majority of people felt that Bonnet was in the wrong and that she needed to make up for it. Bonnet was apparently in the early pregnancy months, and some speculated that this could have made her more hormonal and short-tempered, thus affecting her levels of patience, which could explain her misplaced behavior. But now that she was going to be a parent, how would she feel if she was ever to be in Chris' shoes? Would she simply let it slide, or would she make sure everyone sees her point? The lesson of Camden's unfortunate incident is important for both educators and parents. While we all agree that teachers have to act in a certain way and help their students grow and learn, not break their confidence and self-esteem, they're only human and mistakes and slides can happen. At the same time, parents must pay close attention to their children's behavior and notice any sudden changes. They need to take an active interest in your child's schooling and make sure that at home they have the best conditions possible to study and give their full potential.